This is the Brennan Monorail, a train from the early 1900s that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Not only did it balance itself perfectly on a single rail, but it also mysteriously tilted at the edges. And it worked without any driver's instructions. It was a real invention, and in 1910 its inventor, Louis Brennan, brought it to the public. He thought that using a single rail instead of two would make trains faster and make the railway cheaper to build. And the railway would need only half the equipment to run it. Brennan's monorail could run on existing tracks. It was very stable by design. There was a gyroscope in the center of the train that could correct the train's tilt. It was an engineering marvel, especially for 1910. But how did it actually work? We went through the entire model to show you how great this design was. But to understand what's going on here, we need to know a little bit about gyroscopes. How do gyroscopes work? The basic principle is that if you spin a disc really fast, its speed tries to keep it perfectly still. If you try to tilt it in any direction, it starts to spin on a vertical axis. That's why a gyro will always try to find a way back to equilibrium. Answer: he experimented by putting a small flywheel in a model train, and connecting it to an electric motor. Initially, it worked, and whenever the train started to tip, the disc would work according to its own system and keep the train straight. The problem was that when the train turned, the gyro wouldn't turn with it. Because it was trying to maintain its position in space. From the train's perspective, the gyro was processing, which caused the train to tilt and derail. To solve this problem, Brennan installed a second gyro on the train and spun it in the opposite direction. The two were connected by a gear. But that too failed. He began work on a full-size prototype that he could test with real passengers. But scaling up his design uncovered a major problem. Brennan's small model had been much easier to overcome. The next day, while eating lunch, a letter arrived that held the key to the solution. It was a letter from the King of Nigeria saying that he had a large sum of money for Brennan. I'm just kidding, this has never happened. In order for Brennan's monorail to keep itself perfectly balanced, it needed to control its own weight, which was constantly trying to pull the car. As it tilted, the center of gravity shifted and the car pulled more and more downward. The natural progression wasn't strong or fast enough to keep the train steady. Answer: Brennan came up with a new solution. He realized that the key to it all was controlling the gyro's progression. He connected the gyros to a gasoline engine and enclosed them in a vacuum-sealed casing to reduce friction. Even if the power went out, the gyros would keep the train spinning for 30 minutes before it fell over. This made the gyros work better and faster than the previous design. Now to push the entire train toward balance. Brennan got rid of the guide plates and came up with an even better solution. He mounted the gyros on the train's chassis so that they would spin with the train. His train was so strong that if each passenger stood on one side, the train would balance perfectly. What happened to Brennan's monorail? His prototype was a huge success, and at the time it really seemed like the future. But unfortunately, investors didn't have faith in the design. At that time, double-track trains were already well established, and the fact that each train would need its own gyroscope killed the project. Either way, it's amazing to describe these incredible inventions, and the geniuses behind their creation should be applauded.